I think a lot of us are struggling to understand with the withdrawal in Afghanistan, sort of what era are we in? Now that we've had the 20th anniversary of 9/11, how are we to think differently about the threats facing the country? And we, of course, have foreign terrorist organizations. We have homegrown folks who are inspired by groups abroad. We have our problem with domestic terrorism and domestic extremism. We have border issues. We have cyber issues. So I think at least my constituents are just trying to understand, like, where are we and what are sort of the biggest threats that we're facing. And Director Wray, you've also always been a really straight shooter about numbers, right? About just being clear about data and cases, since that's the bread and butter of the FBI. And so if you could just help me understand order of magnitude when it comes to open investigations that you have of foreign terrorist organizations, people connected to an actual foreign terrorist group, versus a homegrown guy or gal who's inspired by someone abroad, versus a domestic terrorist or domestic violent extremist. Can you just tell me order of magnitude, where do you have the most open cases?
So thank you, Congresswoman. On domestic violent extremists, we currently have, as I said in my opening statement, now up to about 2,700 open investigations, which is up from about, say, 1,400 last year, which was itself up significantly from where it was when I started in this job. On homegrown violent extremists, which is a reference to, as you know, jihadist inspired or foreign terrorist organization inspired, but not necessarily directed terrorism, we have consistently hovered at around 1,000. I think we're a little under that right now, but sometimes it's been more than 1,000, sometimes it's been less than 1,000, but it's hovered kind of up and down around that range. As far as the third category, true foreign terrorist organization cases, I don't have that number at my fingertips. The last time I looked, I think that is probably around 2,000 maybe. So between the foreign terrorist organization cases and the homegrown violent extremist cases, I think that gets you to give or take around 3,000 investigations total.
Gotcha.
Plus the 2,700 domestic violent extremists.
Right. Okay. So it just helps to give a sense of what your level of effort is being focused on, and how to understand this era. Representative Abizaid, I'm sorry, Director Abizaid, there are few people in the world that I trust more than you on Afghanistan. You're an expert on the country. You've spent a lot of time there. You were a Deputy Assistant Secretary on Afghanistan. And I think what I'm getting from my constituents is this question of, are we safer now than we were on 9/11? Are the ability of these terrorist groups to reconstitute something that I should worry about at the same level of worry that I had on September 12th? So help me understand where we are. Are we safer now? Are we the same level of safety with all the investment we've made in 20 years? Where are we?
Thank you very much for the question. As I mentioned yesterday, years of CT pressure in Afghanistan and Pakistan had really relegated both Al-Qaeda and ISIS-K to more regional threats. As I testified today, you look at how the threat has changed over time since 9/11, and the Al-Qaeda network operates in a very different way than it did on that fateful day. And you have a broader array of terrorist groups that are operating across a broader swath of territory, not just Afghanistan and Pakistan, but Africa, Middle East, other parts of South Asia. In general, this kind of broader diffuse terrorist network, exemplified by the Al-Qaeda network and the expanding ISIS network, does appear more regionally focused. That said, that regional focus is something that we in the intelligence community are monitoring very closely to understand at what point it presents a threat to the homeland. When does that regional ambition turn back into a transnational ambition that they're actually pursuing and executing a plan against? With respect to reconstitution in Afghanistan in particular, this is exactly what we're focused on as a top priority today, which is how do we understand how the changed circumstances in Afghanistan will affect the trajectory of two groups that had sustained significant losses over the last couple of years. In the case of Al-Qaeda, over the last 20 years. And what does that mean for their plans and intentions going forward? My own concern is very specifically around ISIS-K and the degree to which ISIS-K, building off of the notoriety it received after the attack on August 26th, will it become more focused on the West, more focused on the homeland than it was previously? And as we look at the kind of dynamism of what's happening in the region, that's what our analysts are going to be focused on going forward.
Young lady's time from Michigan has expired. Chair recognizes young lady from Tennessee for 5 minutes, Ms. Harsh.